Hello, this is Berl Schwartz from City Pulse at Message Makers for our monthly sit down with the Mayor of Lansing, Andy Schor. Andy, good to see you again.
Great to be here, bro.
And a couple of days away from Silver Bells, and the holidays are coming. And what do the Shores do for the holidays?
First, we enjoy Silver Bells,
Yes.
and we have for many, many years. I will spend some time with my parents.
Yeah.
My parents.
Oh, nice.
So I will spend the time with them. Usually we alternate my parents or my wife's parents.
Yeah.
So we do family time.
So you'll head home for the occasion? or
I'll
they
be in
come-
Florida for 2 days.
How
actually.
lovely.
Yeah, home used to be New York, as you know, but my
Right.
parents went south they went south
To retire.
as many Florida or
Right.
New Yorkers do. They go to
Yeah.
Florida, so we will be there for a few days. We alternate with my family, with my wife's family, so we'll do Christmas with my wife's family.
Terrific. Very good. Well, I wanted to ask you about something that will be in City Pulse tomorrow. Bill Castanier, who's the president of the Historical Society, after reading the cover story we did on the importance of the city market and placemaking, said, why doesn't the city acquire the carousel that Michigan State University has? So he's written an op-ed piece we're going to run tomorrow on that. But along the way, he discovered that an intern from your office called MSU, the MSU Museum, about that very thing.
True story.
What's going on?
I had a citizen, I won't say who because I don't know if he's okay with it, but I had a citizen reach out to me and say, I have an idea, and why not put a carousel there? I don't even know if it would work, but we thought before we even look at it, before we even think about it, let's see if it's still there and still available. I didn't know anything about it. He sent me information on what they've done in some other cities. Now, I don't know if that's the right use. I don't know if that makes money. And again, I've said from the beginning, this has to be sustainable. The city's not going to subsidize the space. But he called and said, here's an idea. And we said, well, before we even explore it, let's see if it's even possible. So an intern from my office called over there and was asking some questions about if they have it or where it is. And he was going to report back to me, and he said that he was leaving some phone messages and things. So I'm not sure it's something we would do or not, but it was an idea that someone brought, and we said, let's see if it's even available.
And you're talking about inside the city market.
Yeah, the idea was put the carousel inside the city market. Now we said, I don't know if that's the best use or not. Maybe we do it until we've got something permanent that can go in there. We're talking about using the city market as possible event space until we've got something permanent. I don't want it to sit vacant. So maybe we can, if people want to have weddings, if we want to have Margarita Fest, if we want to do events and things there, at least for now, then we'll see, if we can make that happen so that it's still being used until we've got a permanent replacement.
So as people read tomorrow, it wouldn't be an inexpensive thing to fix up that carousel so it could actually be used again. But it's interesting to hear you talking, though, about this thing that they need to make money. Whatever goes in there needs to, in essence, pay for itself.
My preference, and I've said this for a year now, my preference is for the space to be active, and we want to make sure it's active, it's sustainable. One of the biggest issues we had was subsidizing the city market. We prefer not to subsidize. We prefer something in there to be sustainable. So making money, I'm not trying to make a profit, but we want to make sure it's sustainable, which is why we thought about leasing it out to somebody who can then pay us rent or whatever and go operate a business. Again, we have not made final decisions on anything, and we continue to invite proposals. We've got an RFI that is still out in the field. It's an open-ended, so we continue to invite proposals. And we want it to be sustainable so the city's not subsidizing.
And I think that gets into an interesting philosophical question. And I've noticed in other responses, you fall back on, but we don't have the money. And I'm wondering, though, what would it take to convince you that there's a broader picture here of creating something for the public that is worth sustaining, because the public, like a park. I mean, now granted, Rotary Park was done largely by private money.
Correct.
But what would it take to make it a cause for you to say, okay, now we're going to go raise privately several $1 million, put something in there that will become a destination that won't necessarily be private?
We do that with a lot of things. We're trying to raise for Performing Arts Center. We're trying to, there's a lot of different efforts going on, for private dollars for parks. There are efforts in parks that are not in the downtown. There are efforts going on kind of all over the place to raise private money. It's something, if somebody had a proposal and they thought that we could raise dollars for it, I would consider it. I'm not stuck on anything. My concern is always what we do with taxpayer dollars in our budget, with the possibility of recession coming up. Do we want to take on a sustained debt for some use? Now, maybe there's a great use out there and the city should be funding it. And I don't know, but at this point, as we navigate our budget, I'm not excited about about subsidizing something else within a city-owned building. We own several buildings. We've got a lot of things that we use, that we provide. I'm not excited about that. So I'm always open to proposals when someone has a proposal, not just an idea. If someone has a specific proposal, I'm always open to it. And I was even open to, if that facility, no matter what we do, is going to need some rehab. Is there limited dollars the city has to put in towards restructuring? Again, if you can make up for it with rent in the future, that would be great.
Right.
But I'm open to all of that, and until we find that right answer, I want to see if we can make that used for events and things like that. If we've got an event that someone pays a little bit of money to use it for an event to pay for the utilities and for opening up the bathrooms and cleaning. Again, we don't need to make money on it. I just would like it to be sustainable. But I'm open to any proposal, not just idea, not just the city should recreate a new market and the city can go out and get vendors and the city can do this and the city. If someone's got a proposal where they can bring in and they want to fundraise for it, and I'm open to that, as long as it's sustainable, as long as it's year-to-year sustainable.
Now, we're not talking here about some minor city-owned property. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, as City Pulse story argued, really the heart of the riverfront. It leads me, I guess, to a bigger question, which is, we've had mayors who are now identified by certain development. Even Mayor McCain, who oversaw the white flight period in Lansing's history, contributed the Riverwalk. Perhaps, certainly you would list it among your top 5 or 10 assets Sure. of the city of Lansing. We have David Hollister identified with the Stadium District, and the mayor, Mayor Bernero, to some extent gets credit for negotiating the Ottawa Power Station into one of the most important buildings in Michigan. What is Andy Schor going to leave behind? What's your dream? What's your vision?
Well, if I had to look right now, the answer is a downtown grocery store and first hotel in the downtown in 40 years or 30 years or whatever it is. Or it could be, a tremendous increase in our healthcare with an incredible new hospital system going up, and with McLaren and Sparrow could be doing more. It could be it could be doubling the downtown population to make sure that we have walkability, to make sure that we have people who are staying at night on weekends. It could be something else. We've got a lot of things that are cooking, and it could be something even bigger and even better.
Well, let us into the kitchen.
As soon as I can, I will. But Mayor Bernero didn't do the Ottawa. That wasn't done in his first 2 years. He was here for 12 years, and Mayor Hollister was here for 10 years, and there were. The stadium was not done in a year and a half. He saved us, with GM.
Sounds like you're running for a third term.
I'm
get to the second.
I'm operating in my first term is what I'm doing. But I think that the downtown grocery store and hotel will be a signature achievement and transformational. But I don't know if that's it. It could be something else. I don't know yet. I'm actually doing the job, and what the legacy is will come later.
Well said.
If anything, I don't know.
Now, you have just announced a couple of authorities, or I may not have stated that quite correctly.
Corridor improvement authorities.
Yeah, so you've got the Michigan Avenue one and then the Saginaw. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, when we came in, again, we campaigned on it's not just the downtown that we need to work on. We need to work on many of our business districts. We've got incredible corridors, Michigan Avenue, Saginaw. We're actually working on a corridor improvement authority for MLK. We're working on one up on the north side by the airport. We want to make sure that these corridors are seeing improvement and growth. When you create an authority, you take the business owners, you take the folks that live there, you take those who are interested, you in essence put them together on a board where they do things and they recommend things, but it's also got some tax capture along that corridor. So there are some dollars that can be leveraged for improvements. You're not going to leverage dollars for a major development, but if it's hanging baskets, if it's certain road fixes, if it's security, if it's whatever things they can do to make those corridors even better. So City Pulse is on Michigan Avenue. We want to see Michigan Avenue grow and kind of be that corridor coming in. So now we have many people who are serving on the Michigan Avenue Corridor Improvement Authority Board. It has been there for a while, but it's kind of been stagnant. So we repopulated that board and we repopulated the Saginaw area board and said, now let's start getting improvements. Let's have our potential tax increment finance plans in place. And that's something where it's just increased growth leads to increased dollars, which can then be used back on that space. So we're reinvigorating our corridors through boards and authorities of people who are there and have an interest and can have some say towards what those improvements need to be and what that growth needs to be.
So is there a thought now along the lines of, say, what CATA wanted to do with Michigan Avenue, or are we just talking about what's going to be on the sides of Michigan Avenue?
There's no limitations, but I don't know that we've really talked about transit per se. If Michigan Avenue is bike lanes, if it's we had looked at re-envisioning the avenue last year, and if they come to us and say we need dedicated bike and walk lanes with bump outs next to them that are protected, I'm willing to look at the infrastructure where we can. Now, is it hundreds of millions of dollars for a dedicated bus lane in the middle of the street? They're not going to raise that kind of money, and they could have that conversation, and CATA could have that conversation. But I think it's mostly going to be the structure on the sides, and then what makes it an effective corridor, what makes it good for those who are coming in, who are traveling, entrance and to our city. So we really haven't said we haven't put limits on the conversation, but they're going to come up with generic planning.
And is there a city planner? Is there a Robert Moses of Lansing?
We have we have several city planners. We have, I want to say 3. We just, in the last budget, we authorized the first new city planner in like 30 years. So we have a master plan. So our master plan is 5 or 6 years old, 7 years old, something like that. I mean, you probably remember, it was
Yes.
probably 8-10 years ago. We spent a few $100,000, we did all kinds of community conversations and created a master plan. And the master plan is still good. We review it. Brian McGrain, who's our Director of Economic Development and Planning, they review the master plan. They, you have to, review it and kind of refresh it from time to time. And they are doing that. They're looking at things called, form-based codes and other kind of improvements that we can make. So is there that one person that's spending hundreds of millions of dollars on new, freeways and things? Probably not, but we've got a planning staff of 3 or 4 that are continually evaluating our master plan throughout the city. Now, as you know, some would say Robert Moses was great, and some would say
Yes.
he destroyed the modern city. The Jane Jacobs folks would say he destroyed the modern city. So, we do believe in walkability. We do believe in making sure that the Jane Jacobs pieces are there. But I grew up in New York, and there's a freeway named after and a beach named after Robert Moses. So I think there are changes that will come, but it will be depending on different pieces of the city and where we've got input and things like that. So that's all ongoing.
A further vision question, I guess. I'm looking at a press release from August when you announced hiring a chief strategy officer.
Yeah.
And 3 months later, I'm wondering what difference has it made?
She's really busy. She's doing a lot of great work. She's involved in our kind of our internal reviews, and she is finding efficiencies, which I'm very impressed with. She's restructuring a lot of our internal processes, our purchasing cards, our travel policies, our things like that that needed to be refreshed. She's doing all that. She's looking at different departments internally within finance. She's working with our city treasurer on the treasury department. She's looking at all of our different departments to figure out where efficiencies can be made and changes. And she's looking at some of our healthcare offerings and how many do we have and do we need to shrink those down. And so she's doing a lot of that work. At the same time, she's part of our contract negotiations. So she's very interested in our long-term legacy costs and other things. So Shelby's doing a great job. Shelby Freyer is who we brought in. She's a turnaround specialist. She's operated in Benton Harbor, Flint, Detroit, a variety of places. She came to us from Treasury, from the state, and she's incredibly impressive. And every day she's working hard and finding efficiencies within the city. Eventually we'll have a list and we'll provide it to you.
Great.
I don't have it yet, but I told her start kind of keeping track. But only being here 3 months, she'll tell you it feels like it's been 3 years. She's going through a lot of stuff, and at the same time, we have a budget we have to put together, so she is going to be involved in that. But we've got a budget staff that's working on that to make sure that she can free up her time for restructuring and strategy and things like that. So we're navigating the processes to make sure we can get a budget introduced in March.
Very good. And this week, you're going to hold a listening session. I think this week is Moores River Park.
Moores Park, yeah.
And coming up is one for Reuter Park.
Yep.
Do you attend those personally?
I do.
Yeah. So Reuter Park I wanted to discuss with you because
Sure.
There's been some controversy there about its use by homeless people, and yet, on one side of it, you have now what I imagine is going to be fairly upscale apartments coming online, probably early next year. What do you think what should be done with Reuter Park?
I think Reuter Park is a full city block, so I think there's a lot of things that can be done. Now, I'll tell you what I think. We're about to have a listening session, so I don't want you to think this is the plan, because it's not. But we've looked at it, and right now we do a lot of social service offerings in the park. There are homeless that come to get fed and to get items, toothbrushes and things like that. We've got 3 agencies that will go and get permits to serve the homeless angels, the cardboard prophets, and punks with lunch, and they'll go and they'll serve food, and they'll give them items. And the park is used mostly for that right now, although you do get a lot of people who will go there and eat lunch and things. I would like to see it used for more than just that, but to continue to use it for that. So it's in essence broken in, it's broken into diagonals. And I think we can take a part of it and put some playground equipment there. The library is right across the street. So why can't we have playground equipment for kids? We're talking about maybe a dog park or something for the downtown neighbors where they can bring their dogs to run around. Because, I've been there several times and you see people who come and they let their dog off a leash and they think it's okay, and it's actually not. Holding on to a social service area. So if we're putting playground equipment and a dog park in, we want to still have an area where social services can be delivered, because a lot of people know that's an area where they can go. The bus station is near there. So it's on that bus line. So we know there are people there who can and should be served. So we think we can do all of these things, maybe leaving a part of it for some open space. There was talk of a small little amphitheater, working with the library, working with the downtown neighbors. So I think there's a lot that can be done all at the same time with that park. I'd love to get the fountain working again, but to get it permanently working is about $500,000, which we don't have. But it worked briefly this summer because the Board of Water and Light put some flashing down, and all of a sudden wherever the leak was covered, and it worked. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way to make that work without having to spend $500,000. So these are all, I think, options that we would lay on the table, but we want to hear from the community to see what they think. We've engaged with the downtown neighbors, we've engaged with Cherry Hill, we've engaged with the library, with the county building next door, the Ingham County building, the Porter, We know that the old YMCA is going to be converted. We know that that eventually Lake Trust is going to be converted. So we want to make sure we have options really for everybody. We know in the last few months there's been increased criminal activity there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the homeless are causing criminal activity. I don't want anyone to think that we relate the two. People have the right to be at that park, whether they have a home or not. So they go to that park and they enjoy their time there, and that's great. But there has been an increase in criminal activity, which keeps people away from that park.
What kind of activity?
I can get you the list. There was
a lot of calls.
Yeah, a lot of calls. So we want to make sure we've got a community policing officer who goes there regularly to make sure that everything is okay. He doesn't hassle the homeless. In fact, he helps them out. So it's a good result. But we want to make sure that this is a park that can be used by all, whether you are homeless and getting served, whether you're kids and parents at the library, whether you're a neighbor and you just want to walk around, and whether you're a city or a state worker who wants to enjoy your lunch there. We'd like it to be able to be something used for all. So that's the listening session. What of this do you like? What of this do you not like? What ideas do you have? And again, all within the realm of we only have a certain amount of money to spend to make these conversions.
After what the Community Foundation accomplished at what is now called Rotary Park, with financial support
Sure.
from, among others, the Rotary of Lansing, it almost makes you wonder, should you just turn this over to the Community Foundation, do something creative here?
They've got limited capacity, but they have interest in doing things up and down the river. Riverfront, I wouldn't say development, but riverfront action, or however you want to put it, redeveloping that riverfront with park areas and things is one of their missions. So they're looking at, again, Cherry Hill, the parks over in Cherry Hill, all the way to the Fish Ladder. How do we reinvigorate that riverfront property? So they're always welcome.
Right.
We've actually got a few businesses who have been involved with the downtown Lansing folks who've expressed potential interest in assisting with funding or staff. Whenever you have a park, you need people who can get there and kind of maintain it. So we have lots of different efforts, especially over in Cherry Hill and different parks all around town. So I'm always open to that. But I don't know the Community Foundation has engaged with Rudder Park at this point.
Yeah, okay. I want to turn to some, I guess, politics, for lack of a better term, but before the city council election, you took a neutral stand on candidates running for city council. Of course, the big upset was that Brandon Betts, a very progressive individual, beat Jody Washington, whom many people would consider conservative. And I have to wonder why you're neutral when it comes to an incumbent like Jody Washington, who really disagreed with you on some policy issues, and hence we have a more conservative marijuana policy, for example. She, before your time, but she voted against progressive interests on city council. Why wouldn't it make a difference to you enough to say, you know what, we need to make a change here?
I want people I can work with on city council. And Jody's someone who I worked with very well on some things, and some things we disagreed on. But I can say that about almost every member of city council. We all have different opinions and different agreements. And for me, it's getting to 5 votes. Getting to 5 votes to get something, and getting to 6 votes to prevent an override if I have to veto something.
But you got to 5 votes on marijuana.
I did.
But only by giving away things that were important to you.
That's true, but that's the art of compromise, and that's the same that we've had on a lot of different things. I've had council members vote against things or had to negotiate things on a variety of different issues.
So you don't think it'll make a difference having now a progressive person in that first ward seat?
I do on some issues. So we one of the things that we have talked about in the past is mixed income affordable housing. So if we want to make sure that we've got housing that's not just market rate, but market rate and affordable and workforce, I think that now that conversation is a different conversation because of the makeup of council. Marijuana, the conversation is a different conversation. Now, going in, did I think that we could even get what we got passed? I think I would have questioned it, but again, we negotiated and we compromised and we got that passed. There are other things, development. We've been able to do a lot with development, and Jody was a yes vote on most of that. I think almost all of that. I think Brandon will be also. I think we can have good conversations where we are on the same page on a lot of things, and that's just a matter of communication. So I did not get involved in any of the races because I felt that I had people that I could work with effectively, and I wanted to hear what the campaigns would be. And again, I've already had a great conversation with Councilman-elect Betts, and we talked before the campaign. He reached out and we talked. Again, I would talk to anybody. We talked after the campaign, and I think we'll have good conversations, and I'm confident the next 2 years will be a great 2 years to do things for the city of Lansing. So why didn't I get involved? Because I was confident that any of the candidates running I could work with. Now during the campaign, I'd say that may have shifted, but with the first ward, I'm comfortable with Councilman Betts, just like I was comfortable working with Councilwoman Washington.
What do you mean it may have shifted?
Some of the literature that came out certainly concerned me. Now, when you run for office and you run against incumbents, you say things, and there was a literature piece from one candidate that made some claims that the city is up to its eyeballs in debt and they have no police officers, and actually the piece went after Lansing City Council and blamed City Council. But things like that I did not think were productive for the city, and I was disappointed to see that. But a political campaign is a political campaign, but it's a matter of how you govern.
Councilman-elect Betts has as pure a position on incentives for developers as I suppose anybody does. He, generally speaking, thinks we're giving away way too much. What would you say to him on that?
We've had that conversation, and I have explained to him the many conversations that we have developed with developers when they first come to us. What goes to council and what's reported in the news is very different than a lot of times than what comes to us originally. And if we need to do a better job explaining to our city council friends what was brought to us at first and how we got to where we got to, then we'll do that. And I hope he appreciated that. I talked to him about the many projects that go on that don't get incentives and the many ones that come to us for incentives that we don't grant them. I talked to him about the EDS project, which is going to be self-storage, who came to us for an incentive originally, and we said no, but then when we negotiated with them and said, this has to not just be about the EDS building in South Lansing, it's got to be about public improvement and making that area look nice, because it's a huge concrete jungle right now, and they agreed to that, and then we agreed to the incentive, and we talked about Lake Trust and how it's not just redoing that Lake Trust building, it's doing that outer area, so there's an outlot building, and it looks nice, and it's a redevelopment of South Downtown instead of just taking asbestos out of a building. When we talk about some of the negotiations that we go through before it even gets to council, this is what we do. And again, I think he appreciated that, and we'll see how things go moving forward. He is an economist, so he does understand, when kind of the finance gap issues of if someone comes to us with a project and there's a finance gap, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Now, they're always going to try and get it to their benefit, and I'm always going to look out for the city. I want projects to happen, but I want to make sure that our incentives are only going towards needed costs with a finance gap or with necessary cleanup, that would prevent it from going to a sprawling area in a greenfield. And I think he gets most of that. So we'll have conversations project by project on what we're doing, and if he raises concerns, and if he votes no, he votes no, and that's his right as a councilman. But I'd like to have communication both ways to say, this is where we started, this is where we landed, and we think this is going to be good for the city, and this is why, and have conversations.
Speaking of developers, I guess I'm not as surprised as I used to be, but I noticed that when some building becomes available on Michigan Avenue for rent, say for example where discount signs used to be on Michigan Avenue, now there's a sign saying contact the Gillespie Group. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. Some house that you think, oh, these are, here's a remaining house on Michigan Avenue. Now it's for rent by the Gillespie Group. They own Sears, the Sears building rather.
It's the property. Oh yeah.
They own the property that Sears is on.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder about concentration in the hands of a developer, and further, what kind of conversations are ongoing with that developer? How far ahead, for example, does a mayor know that Pat Gillespie's gathering property, and what's he gathering it for?
Some. We have some conversations. They have some properties that they're being marketed for incredible use. The Eau Claras, they've got a document out that shows what it is and what it can be used for. There are probably 3 or 4 properties that they're currently marketing. If they're buying properties and they're collecting them for development, they don't have to report that to us. They can purchase whatever they want, just like the Bogies can purchase what they want, just like the Ides can purchase what they want. We have many developers that work in this city, and I appreciate that. You have people who are investing in the city who want to make the city better. Both Pat Gillespie tends to focus Michigan Avenue because that is his interest in developing Michigan Avenue, and we're always happy to hear that there's something going on. He collected the properties for the downtown grocery store, and he had to collect, it was 20 or 30 or whatever different properties to make that happen. Did I know about that when he was collecting it? No, I didn't. I was also running for office at the time. But when he came to me and said, we've got these pieces collected, we'd like to do a grocery store and the first hotel in 30, 40 years, he let us know. He has the right to buy properties just like anybody else. He's putting his dollars into those areas as long as he keeps them, he upkeeps the properties. They're not, a problem. Again, we've got lots of developers that do that through the city. Gary Granger owns properties downtown. Paul Gentilozzi owns several properties. We've got lots of developers that do that, and sometimes they hold them just because they want to be building owners, and sometimes they collect them for development. And usually when they're getting ready to develop, they let us know, whether it's for building permits or for whatever reason. But I think it's great that we have people who are interested in Lansing. I'd like to bring in more developers from throughout the country to invest in Lansing. But I do think it's great that we have people who believe in Lansing, who want to see Lansing grow and are putting their money where their mouth is. So I know there are lots of people who are critical, but at this point, we want to see Michigan Avenue be this effective corridor coming into the city. And if there are properties there that are going to be developed, then I'm always interested.
I want to be sure to ask you about the traffic circle, because now the Verge's red balls, as everyone has come to think of them, are back thanks to local businessman Jim Gentilozzi.
Paul Gentilozzi.
Paul Gentilozzi. And but I gathered, because you were looking at a piece of sculpture for that spot, that's not a long-term plan. So what happened, as you know, the old ornaments, we'll call them, were broken. We actually had a truck that ran into 2 of them and broke them last year. And no, we weren't going to spend the $8,000, whatever. DLI, Downtown Lansing Inc., wasn't going to spend the $8,000. They have a lot of other things they're doing. So we indicated that, and the response was a lot. There were a lot of people who were very upset that loved those ornaments. When we came in, we had them painted. So when I came in for that first year, we had them painted. So they were painted red with silver at the top, so you knew that they were ornaments. And we put some snowflakes on them, and we made them look nicer. And when they were broken, we were disappointed. I would like to see something in that traffic circle. The ornaments are only there seasonally. So we talked about Sundance, this piece that was at Scrap Fest, and I purchased it, and we're going to put it in the City Hall Plaza. And we'll put it in the plaza for now, probably the week after Silver Bells.
We may put that in the traffic circle over the summer. I had people say, you can't put Sundance in the traffic circle over the winter. It's not winter holidays. So we said, maybe we'll put it in there for the summer. And when that was in the press release we put out that I purchased it. But I don't know what we'll do next year. You know, Paul Gentilozzi offered to fabricate new ornaments, to purchase new ornaments and put them out, and that's on his dime. So we appreciate that. You know, next year I'm not sure what we're going to do. You know, when you look at what goes in that circle, should we have a permanent piece? Should we have seasonal pieces? There are a lot of people that we had 10,000, 11,000 likes when we said we were putting the ornaments back in. I mean, it was the response, it was an overwhelming positive response when we said the ornaments are going to come back. But again, it could be anything. I've always kind of had this in my brain that maybe we should have like silver bells in the circle, and maybe we should have seasonal options. So we're going to look at that.
That's interesting.
You know, I'll tell you, we had someone approach us about doing like a ball drop next year for New Year's, like they do in New York.
Yeah.
So we had some local steelworkers who approached me and said we could build a ball drop. So maybe we put the ornaments up and then a ball drop and then Sundance or something else. So we're kind of playing around with it. I think, you know, we'd always talked about this permanent piece in the circle. Maybe it's seasonal pieces. Maybe it's not one permanent piece. So I'm thinking it through, but it surprised me the overwhelmingly tremendous positive response we got when we said that the ornaments are being repaired and put back out. So I think the community has spoken on that they like having something there seasonally for the holiday at least, and we'll continue to have conversations.
Your arts commission now is the idea of a performing arts center now is advancing to the full commission in December, which presumably will recommend continuing with that project. Share with us whatever you can about the future of a performing arts center in Lansing.
Sure. Well, as you know, we've got a feasibility study which will be released, you know, soon. And I have not been part of the kind of the ins and outs of the release process, but it will be released soon. We believe that there's a need. There's a need for that mid-range. We're not competing with Wharton, but you know, there's a need for that mid-range 1,200 seat performing arts center. You know, the next step is if we're going to have one, we have to fund it. And the city of Lansing doesn't have $40 or $50 million to fund it. Are there folks out in our community who would like to see us have a performing arts center? Can we raise the dollars that we need to build it? And then do we have the dollars to keep it sustainable once it's built? So the study talks about how much it costs to build and then ongoing operational costs. You know, everyone looks at Grand Rapids and, you know, the DeVosses put a lot of money in for the Performing Arts Center in Grand Rapids. Do we have those entities here in Lansing? So we're going to spend the next few months to find that out. We have a professional fundraiser who can, in essence, talk to folks to see if they're willing to do that. And if there's support for that, then, you know, we'll look at moving forward. I'm not willing to say, yes, we're going to move forward with the Performing Arts Center until we know that there are people who are willing to sign on the dotted line over the next 25, 30 years or whatever it is to help fund it. It's just not something we can lay on the backs of the citizens of Lansing right now to say the city is going to put in $40 to $50 million. So we need to fund it.
It is such a large amount, the 40 to 50 million just to get it built.
Yeah.
Then I believe it's something on the order of $640,000 a year deficit that's being foreseen.
Correct.
You don't at some point, don't you have to take a leap of faith?
Yes. And if we get close to the number, then we take a leap of faith.
Which number?
The number to build. To start.
To build.
You know, we know if you go to Wharton, you look at the program and you look at all the donors, and there's 15 pages of donors. You know, we know there are people who donate to Wharton and to other arts and performance and entities in Lansing. So you know, the experts that I talk to think we can probably get to the 600,000 or whatever it is operationally year to year. There is a leap of faith there to say if we can raise the money to get it built, do we have the supporters operationally? So yes, there is a little bit of a leap of faith there. I don't know what the number is. You know, if the consultant says it's $50 million and we can get to $40 million, is there a leap of faith to say, I will sign on the dotted line, and we need to figure out how to find that final 10, whether it's other donors or what. Yeah, I think there is a leap of faith, but the leap of faith is not zero. It's not zero to say I will put the city of Lansing taxpayers on the hook for $50 million if nothing happens. This is a regional facility. So for the city of Lansing taxpayers to be on the hook for a regional facility, I don't think that makes sense, again, when the number is zero. As we get closer, then it could be a regional conversation. Is there a regional millage? Is there a regional authority that supports? I don't know. I don't know that, and if we can get a good enough number to say we have enough to get us close to building it, then I'm willing to take the leap of faith. But when the number is zero, I'm not.
So the next step, presuming you move forward with actual fundraising, is going to need to start fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And
December.
And so what kind of timetable can you share with us about how long you will have to determine whether this is feasible?
I'm hoping the next few months. I mean, I think December you start, but as you hit Thanksgiving and then you hit the December, the Christmas, Hanukkah holidays. Those are 2 months that are very difficult to get a hold of people. So I'm hoping in the first quarter of next year that we have an idea of what it would take to move forward and whether we sign on the dotted line.
All right. The hotel and the city hall. And, I've heard from a few people saying, what is the problem here? The mayor's had going on 2 years now to solve this problem, and we're as far as the public knows, we're in the same place. So are we in the same place?
We are, but we continue to work on it.
But is it simply not a big enough priority that it's taking going on 2 years?
No, it's a big priority, but it's not an easy problem to fix. And it's in the same conversation. It's $30 million that we need to be able to pay for. No, it's more than that. We need to do it within a $30 million number. So, we continue to look at options that are out there to see what can we do for within the cost. It's the same concern. When we find that here is a building we can get into, or a building that we can build that will cost us $30 million or less, or maybe even a little bit more, but within range, and we can get out of City Hall and get in there into that new building. When we have found that, we can run the numbers, and we are comfortable that it makes sense, then we'll pull the trigger.
And what now, going on 2 years, what do you think is going to change that will make this decision any easier?
Options.
But what because some new option may develop that's unforeseen? Are we at a point now where there is no good option?
No, I don't think that's true. And the first year, keep in mind, you say 2 years. The first year and a quarter, we were looking at combining courts, and that would have taken the courts and the lockup off the table. And had that happened, we waited a year to see if we could do a consolidated court to take our courts and lockup off the table. Then it would have happened the next month. Had the consolidation for courts happened, and they went down to Jolly and Dunkel in that area, and we moved forward. The next month we would have announced we're ready to move, because that would have taken the courts and the lockup off the table, and we thought we would have been within the $30 million range. So we continue to play with options. It's a priority, but I think for the first year and a quarter, so the rest of this year, we've been working on how to make those options work. If it's current options and they're too expensive, can we reduce the amount of space that we need? Can we reduce the footprint that we need, and then look at city property? Again, we've had those conversations. We have parking garages. Can we put some departments in some of our existing city property, so we need less space to rehab? You have to make things fit within buildings. We did a space study to say, do we really need 130,000 square feet, which is what the Bernero report had said. Can we reduce that? So we're playing with a lot.
What did you determine?
We determined it can be reduced. It can be reduced probably to, I forgot what we said, between 80 and 100,000, depending on who is in and who is out. several of our departments, our human relations and community service department, that's kind of an outward facing department. So do we put them in a location that's more outward facing rather than in City Hall? Does that make sense? What's the rehab for a parking structure, or the South Washington office complex that we have, the old Armory in South Lansing? What are the rehab costs for those? We're playing around with all those numbers, and we continue to look at options that are available within the city. So I think that I have not given up on it yet, but I'm still hopeful. And again, when I've told you this repeatedly on your show, when I know,
Yeah.
you'll know.
Right. But when I hear you say I'm still hopeful, usually people say that because they don't really know what that hope is.
No, we're still actively working on it.
Okay.
If we weren't, I'd tell you, but we're still actively working on it to get the numbers to work. And again, I am still hopeful that we'll have something, but when we get there, you'll know.
Everything going forward on Red Cedar, you're satisfied?
As far as I know, yeah. It's they had to get their financing, which I believe they did. They're going to the MEDC for the state piece, and I want to say that's in December or January. So it's still moving forward, and the dirt's moving. So if you go over there, you can see the dirt moving. So the dirt's moving, and they continue to build their financing for their phased build. So yeah, it's still moving forward.
Very good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. Anything you want to say before we go?
Not that I can think of. You got me on most of the issues that we've announced, so we appreciate that.
My pleasure. Andy Schor, great holidays, and enjoy. Stay warm in Silver Bells. I don't think it's too bad this year.
Hopefully not. I'm always in the
30s.
I'm always in the carriage. We're in the horse-drawn carriage, so it's weird, and we wave, and it's always a lot of fun. My kids always love it. And then we get to be on the riser and kind of see all the electric light things come through. I love Silver Bells. It's a blast. We'll have fireworks again this year. We didn't have them last year, but we'll have them again this year. So I love it. It's a lot of fun.
That's right. I forgot about it.
And there may be a tree and menorah lighting this year, so we're not sure.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We will see what happens.
All right. Well, Andy, as I said, good holidays to you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, and everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Message Makers for producing this in their studio in Old Town. We will, I think, be back in December. We haven't discussed, but. Busy time for everyone. But for City Pulse, I'm Berl Schwartz.